Well, hello again, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Story to Screen podcast, the movie podcast where we review all different kinds of movies, new and old. I am Chris. Joshua Ling is not with us today. Unfortunately, he couldn't record with us. But today with me, I have a friend of mine, Trey Boles.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
Glad to be here. I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing
Never
good.
mind, I don't really want to know.
Well, please.
Just kidding.
Okay, but Trey, tell the audience who you are and what you do.
Well, I am Trey Boles, and I am professionally, I'm a digital animator, so I do a little bit of everything. I do a little bit of illustration, some storyboarding, some script editing, of course, animation. I work for a company called Commotion Engine, and I've worked on cartoon-like videos. I've done a little bit of live-action shoots. I've been an assistant or a key grip. I've been sound guy on several different shoots for interviews and such. I've also done a little bit of special effects. So I've done a little bit of everything almost. So
That's
it's
cool.
real nice.
What's the name of your website?
I work for Commotion Engine, so
Okay.
you can find them at commotionengine.com. That's a subsidiary of the Effects Forge, I guess. So check us out.
Okay. Were there any major projects that you worked on?
I've animated videos for Dell. I've animated 2 videos, or helped animate 2 videos for Dell. I've worked for Beachhead Studios, or I've done a video for them, and they're the ones that created Call of Duty. I've also done videos for Nokia. I've done a video for Oreo. And by done a video, I mean I helped in the animation process, because really it's a group effort, and I do a very limited section of each video. We just break it up and get the videos done very quickly. And I've done work for the High Calling. I've done work for various smaller companies that have apps or such. That's one of our big markets, are videos for apps, explaining the apps and stuff. So very broad spectrum of videos and styles and stuff like that.
I gotta look for the Oreo one. That must have been really cool.
Yes, you'd be surprised. Working with these big companies is very unique. For example, you can't ever show, somebody eating more than 3 Oreos, or else Oreo will get sued.
Really?
Yes, so, all the fun kids eating 50 Oreos at once, they're like, no, you can't do that.
Is it just nutritional?
Yeah,
nutrition?
the serving size is 3, so you can't show people eating more than 3.
Are they that strict? Wow.
Yeah, and a very particular market,
Wow.
the very particular of who they're trying to market to, and so that really sets the definition of everything you do in the video, which is very, very different. So, just fun things like that, and working with various clients, we might think a video looks really cool, really nice, and they go, no, we don't like this, and that's like what makes it cool, and so we got to change it to something less cool, but, that's the way the industry goes. The customer's always right, except for, when they're not right, but even then, you're supposed to pretend that they're right, so.
Okay.
Fun stuff.
Okay. Well, check out Commotion,
Engine.
CommotionEngine.com, and give him a call. Employ this young man. Anyway, today's review is the new Guillermo Del Toro movie, Pacific Rim, starring Idris Elba and Charles Henem. I also want to apologize for the long delay. Josh and I, just scheduling wise, we weren't able to record and do reviews for other movies recently. Just scheduling wise, we just haven't been able to work out. So this is like our first in a couple weeks, and of course I'm by myself with a special guest on the show. So we're hoping we'll have a good time tonight recording the show. So it's been like 2 weeks since the movie came out, and the movie apparently hasn't been doing very well. Have you actually heard about that?
I know it got some sketchy reviews. But I would imagine it's doing mediocre. I haven't heard that it's doing bad, but I haven't heard that it's blown any box office.
No, it hasn't. It hasn't done like Transformers numbers, which is kind of shocking, because this is kind of like appealing to that Transformers crowd.
Definitely.
But it has not made back its budget, which is like, I think it's at like $198 million, and it's only made like over $170 million.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really low, and it's only been like 2-3 weeks since it came out, and that's kind of a pretty low sum. I mean, like it hasn't done like Lone Ranger numbers, which that movie has been a disaster.
Oh yeah, good reasons. But don't
So, well, let's go ahead and just jump into our review of Pacific Rim.
We always thought alien life would come from the stars, but it came from deep beneath the sea, a portal between dimensions in the Pacific Ocean. Something out there had discovered us. They counted on the humans to hide, to give up, to fail.
The first time I saw any footage of this movie was back with the Hobbit, and I was sitting there in the theater watching. They were playing the trailer, and the first thing that they showed was the dinosaur or the kaiju monster coming over the Golden Gate Bridge. And for a moment there, I thought that, oh, is this the new Godzilla movie?
Yeah,
because that's been long. They've just recently finished shooting, but there is a new Godzilla movie coming out next year. So I thought like, oh, is this the trailer for the new Godzilla? And once they start showing the robots, I'm like, oh, well, this is completely different than what I thought.
Yeah.
This wasn't really like on my most anticipated movie of the year. It was kind of, if it comes out, if it's any good, I'll go see it. But, I've got to say, as cool of a movie as it was, as cool as it looked and the visual effects and all that stuff, I really kind of felt bored for some weird reason. And it wasn't, like, I was entertained by it. That was the thing. I was entertained by it. But there were moments, like, I felt like the human character stuff, like the human characters when they were showing all their personal, the human drama stuff.
Yeah.
It kind of
very, very wooden, sort of just thrown in there, just to be thrown in there, just sort of.
And it kind of dragged. But as we talk more in depth about the stuff, it was, there was some stuff that when I thought about it, that I can actually kind of appreciate a little bit more. But other than that, I basically left the theater kind of feeling like, okay, I got what I came to see. It was a monster.
Monster robot bash.
Monster.
Rock'em sock'em robot monsters, yeah.
Yeah. Power Rangers meets Godzilla. That's what,
yeah, exactly.
Like there were moments where I thought like, hey, this is straight up Power Rangers for some reason.
Well, again, Power Rangers was derived directly. I mean, the initial season of Power Rangers was nothing but a re-edit of Japanese. They just ported it over
into America.
In America. And the thing is they'd actually cut out the Japanese actors whenever you saw their faces, and they just film American actors, and then they just edit it and dub over with American voices, and that was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the very, very first season, which is why I grew up watching it.
Oh, I think a lot of kids of our generation probably did see that first season. The overall movie, it didn't really impact me. Like, I wasn't really expecting much with this movie. That was the weird thing. I wasn't really expecting much. I came in and I left the theater got what I got, but it just didn't hit a huge chord with me. But other than that, it was a pretty entertaining movie. So what was your overall opinion?
Well, I remember many months ago, the first I ever saw of it was actually a poster, it's actually 2 or 3 pictures. One was the main poster where you see a giant robot with 2 little guys standing on it.
Oh yeah.
And then the second one was the official poster with, you see like the little portal sort of in the background. It says Pacific Rim. And then I think the third photo was you saw the guy in his suit inside of this cabin with a bunch of cords and stuff hanging around. And that was the first I saw of it. And again, they had the description, Del Toro.
Del Toro.
Del Toro. And it was about him and his movie about, Godzilla meets giant robots, Transformer style. And it was pretty much about just a movie with robots and monsters fighting. So that's what I expected. And I was sort of interested in it more particularly because Del Toro was supposed to film The Hobbit. Or direct The Hobbit, but then he didn't, and they got Peter Jackson back. And so it was interesting to see what he wanted to do, what would make him leave The Hobbit in order to
pursue this passion project.
So it was definitely very interesting, and even I saw a render or two of what Smaug was supposed to be and where he was going with that direction, and I could see very stark, similarities between what they wanted in Smaug the Dragon and what they ended up with as the monsters in this movie.
Oh, really? Okay,
so
cool.
I think it was really implementing into the other movies he wanted to make, and I haven't ever seen any of the Hellboy movies, but I would imagine that theme of the monster theme really worked into that as well. So I really think this has influenced a lot of what he has been making and directing, which is really interesting. But I think overall, it was a popcorn movie. A movie you just sit down, you just eat popcorn. It could be at your house, it could be in the theater. It's just one of those eye candy type movies. Again, people were expecting Inception or Oblivion. It's supposed to be this really high end special effects, deep story, character development. This really touches a chord in your heart. Really you want to relate with the characters. But really, it was all a big excuse for giant robots to be smashing into giant monsters. And everyone loves a good Godzilla movie. Everyone loves a giant robot movie. So this was sort of the two got together and decided to have a party. And so that's what we got. Yeah. And so I would say that it would have been nice to have better actors. Not better actors, but better directing. I think that was one of the things. The actors weren't necessarily bad. It was just the scripting and the lack of understanding that the script was pretty bad. I mean, professionally, the script is everything. If the script's bad, the movie's going to be bad. Yeah. If the dialogue in the script is obviously bad, then obviously the dialogue in the movie's going to be bad. And I think that they really didn't try hard enough with the dialogue. And I think that's what really made the movie not as good as it could have been. Yeah,
that was something I kind of said. There was one character in the movie that... Yeah, it was the Australian pilot. Mm-hmm. It was the father, and his dialogue, I could not understand a word that he said. Did you have? I don't know.
I had a fine time understand. I mean,
I don't know. Maybe
I guess I've heard a lot of if you ever watched a lot of Crocodile Hunter or other places, I've heard a lot of Australian accents. Yeah. So I enjoyed him talking. I think that I had more of a hard time understanding the main actress. If anything, I thought that the dialogue from I don't know if he was a general, but
Idris Elba.
He's British, but his British accent really threw me for a loop. You don't expect that.
He is British.
Yeah, he is, and so his accent came through a lot. They didn't really try to hide it. They just which was fine, but it was just different. Even just the way he talked, you didn't expect to hear that. Yeah. Especially if you're watching the trailers, the only dialogue you hear is his really epic, King Henry V last speech type thing. And, he sort of pronounces words differently, so you're really confused. For a long time, I was very confused as to why he sounded so weird in the trailer. But it was like, because he's British. And
When you saw that scene, did your mind immediately go Henry V?
No, actually, I read that on a review, and I had watched the movie within the last month or so for the first time, and I thought it was really cool, the whole King Henry V speech.
Oh, yeah.
So that sort of stuck with me, the way the reviewer related that. But really, the thing is that's very common in a lot of movies. You just don't catch it as much. Yeah. The whole epic last stand, you got to have the leader sort of invigorating the people for the last stand, and
my mind actually, when I was watching, they're like, he's doing Kenneth Branagh's Henry V, the St. Crispin's Day speech. Yeah. So Henry V should have said, "We're canceling the apocalypse, the French apocalypse." There you go.
Yeah. So, but I mean, it's the formula, cookie cutter, expectations of, what it takes in order to move the plot along. They're thinking, we need some epic motivation before the final battle. Yeah. We need some emotional, stirring up, uplifting.
The stirring of the soldiers before they go into the fight.
Yeah, and even as the audience, they needed to stir that emotion up. Yeah. So it was just, this is textbook, equation, this plus this equals, we need to have a speech now.
Yeah.
And again, that comes into the script writing. They could have done something a little bit better.
Yeah. You mentioned some of the acting. One of the actors that I just couldn't stand was was Charlie Hunnam's Beckett character, the lead character. I did not like him. I found him to be very stiff, very wooden. I don't know if he looks familiar. I think I've seen him in...
I want to say that he was the actor that did G.I. Joe, the first G.I. Joe movie. Again, I think that, again, to the script, the script writing, because, I mean, a lot of the times it seems like the lines work. Like, if you're to read them on paper, it's like, okay, he says this, she says this, this other guy says this. Okay, that works. But the execution when on screen...
The actor saying... When it was...
It's like, especially what impressed me with like what you're saying is when he was trying to get the girl to be his co-pilot.
I found that stuff.
There wasn't a lot of interaction. It was just he sort of liked her, so why is he trying to get her to be his co-pilot? Is it because he likes her? Because he thinks she's pretty? Because he sees some skill that she has, but then he hasn't had any opportunity to see skill develop in her. Does he like her personality? He hasn't really talked to her. So it was really confusing. And like you're saying, it made it very hard to appreciate him, his dialogue, and stuff like that.
I think the character was written fine. Mm-hmm. I do think, because I think he had a clear arc in this movie.
Yes,
but I just felt like the actor was just, I don't know if it was just Del Toro's direction, or if it was, well, obviously it was his direction, or if it was the actor ability. I mean, I think in terms of the character that he was given, I think the character worked, and it was a very, well, just like the underdog, well, not necessarily an underdog, but just like this, he's basically this professional, and then with the death of his brother, that really sends him down to the bottom of the well. I know that the Mako, the Chinese girl character didn't really have that much to do, but she was more of a bridge to his conscience and to his helping him get back into the
swing
of things.
I personally think, after watching it and sort of being a little disappointed with him, I have to say I actually really like the way it turned out. I think a lot of the other character dialogue was a little annoying. I actually couldn't understand the other British actor, which was the mathematician guy.
Oh,
he was the other one I had a really hard time understanding.
The two science dudes were talking so much that I could not repeat what they just said.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the American scientist, I didn't like him as an actor either, or his dialogue. He was very wooden. A lot of his lines seemed very forced. And, he
just seemed like a guy just reciting dialogue for the most part.
And I think what's interesting is, like you pointed out, or sort of like what I was talking about earlier, is it was almost like everything was just to be there, just to make it a robot movie. It was just the actors might not have been taking this seriously. The director might not have been taking the dialogue seriously. It's sort of like, oh, this is just an excuse to have some sort of plot, just to have giant robots.
Yeah.
And I think that that has happened in the past and has turned out great. If you look at Star Wars Episode 4, I guess it is, A New Hope. If you look at the documentaries or read up on that, you'll notice that the actors did not think this was going to be any sort of movie that would have any impact at all. They didn't take the acting seriously. They just did whatever. They didn't take the cut seriously. They didn't take the dialogue seriously. They just acted. Yeah. And that is, personally my favorite Star Wars movie. It was very well done, even though the actors didn't take it seriously. And I think that a director and an editor and scriptwriter can overcome actors not taking it seriously. But they didn't in Pacific Rim. Which is too bad.
Let me just throw throw some praise for Idris Elba, who did a fantastic job. He was kind of like the man who had well, in the movie you find out that he's actually a former
Jaeger pilot, is that?
Yeah. And this is really interesting because where we're going to lead into this, it's actually the technology of how you function these robots, because you find out that he did it for a long time, I guess, and that it had this huge effect on him
physically,
because and even the movie in the prologue it sets up it sets up the science and the nature of this of the robots.
It was very, very rushed, very dangerous to begin with. Yeah.
Yeah, and there were some side effects so that if you were the single pilot running this machine, there was going to be like some side effects. So for some reason, they believed that it would be better balanced if you had two. Mm-hmm. Now, scientifically, I don't know who would be the one controlling the robot. Mm-hmm. I don't know or who would be the one that would be the main driver of the machine, if you know what I mean. I know that there would the two of them together, but if I know their minds would interlink, as the movie would kind of show, especially like in a particular moment in the film. But yeah, Idris Elba just did a fantastic job as Stacker, and he got his Henry V moment, as we talked about earlier today.
Yeah, I have to say that the more I talk about or hear people talk about him, I have to say I like him more and more, even though at first I was a little put off. Yeah. I think his character development was very, very good. I mean, the whole blood, his nose kept bleeding, and you didn't
because
know
of the
why.
side effect of the rope.
And you're you're really confused in why he wouldn't let the girl into the robot, and and he was very protective. I really liked her and his relationship.
Yes.
And we could go in, as we talk about plot, we can bring in, Christian elements. And one of the big things about this relationship was that she respected him so much she would keep from doing something that she dreamed of doing in order to respect him. Yeah. And, that's something that, a lot of people, they don't appreciate, they don't think is realistic or practical. But in a Christian worldview, that is an exemplary relationship that people don't really get. Yeah.
Another thing too about the Mako character was that she wasn't really for Beckett. She wasn't really much of a romantic.
Yes, and we can talk about that later. That's one of the things I do really like about the movie.
Yeah, there wasn't like this, like it wasn't romantic or anything of that nature. It was just she served more as a person that could relate to him because of their personal losses. Mm-hmm. You remember, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
But we'll get into that later on later on in the review. So, but what did you think of the design of the robots and of the monsters in this one? Because you could definitely see a lot of Guillermo del Toro's love for the Godzilla movie monsters.
Yeah.
And the anime robot.
Well, as I did do robotics for about 3 years, made it to the World Championship twice. Oh, cool. So I really do have an appreciation for robots and for engineering and stuff like that. And I have to say, I also play a lot of games that involve robots, especially large robots in a game series called Total Annihilation, which is two giant robots that create factories that make smaller robots and just these giant robot armies clashing over worlds and stuff. And it was very iconic for me. And it seemed to, particularly the main robot, Gypsy Danger, I think is what they called it, it did seem to bring a lot out of the Total Annihilation commanders that I remember. Not that I think it was on purpose, it just reminded me a lot of that, particularly the way the armor sort of covered different areas and the way they were shaped. I think a lot of the robots were really cool. I'm sort of disappointed that you only saw 5 or so. You really just wanted them to keep showing really cool robots fighting. And Go ahead. Some of the robots were really cool, particularly the Australian robot. Yeah, was really cool.
Like, wasn't it like green or was it like silver? No. I think the green one was the Russian one.
Yeah, the Russian. That's another thing. I didn't like the Russian one. It looked really absurd. I thought the Chinese one with the 3 arms was a little weird, sort of made sense with the trios, but I think they could have done something better with that.
Another interesting thing, too, was that, considering the prologue, the beginning of this movie, it's rushed, but they do manage to, in the first 11 minutes, I think it was the first 11 minutes, because it was a long time before they showed, the actual title for the movie. They're like, oh, now they're showing the title? Okay, that's weird. But, they managed to actually, to squeeze in the beginning of the Hagers or whatever it's called, robots in that first prologue. And you would think that this would be the movie, like the first 40 minutes would be about, like, you would get the monster and then it would be the retaliation of these people.
Yeah.
What do we do? What do we do? We create this thing.
Yeah.
I thought that was handled really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
There were some points in time like, wouldn't the monster have destroyed a chunk of the world by the time they finished that robot?
Yeah.
Because they do set up in the very beginning that the man's, like airplanes and all that stuff, the Air Force couldn't destroy it. Mm-hmm. Those the monsters.
Well, I think they began where they eventually was able to kill the monster, but that was the thing, is that they didn't have the right technology at the time to do it. Massive amounts of troops. They just sent a lot of planes at it. They just sent a lot of tanks at it. They sent a lot of missiles at it.
Okay.
And just eventually were able to kill it.
Okay. The suits that they would actually wear in the robots, that was actually really, really cool. They look like robots. They look like RoboCop.
Yeah.
They had a very
you gotta have cool armor.
I mean,
if you're gonna have a guy move, you gotta have cool.
Another cool thing is that it wasn't like a spandex suit where it was actually a metal
mechanized. I think particularly they had like a little spine. My friend really was like, "Oh, that looks like I think he said the Klingon battle armor or something or whatever." he's a Trekkie, but it did have a lot of this armor that was made in order to be able to track their movements almost. Mm-hmm. So it was really cool.
I love how they were screwed, like they would actually screw in the parts. It wasn't like this one piece suit that you just throw on and then you just get the helmet. Mm-hmm. It was like we have to diligently attach all these pieces together in order for it to serve a function. Mm-hmm. Now the action, I have a lot of problems with the action. I mean, like in the wide shots when you would get a good shot of the monsters and the robot facing each other, it was slow. I mean, it was these
giant
robots, the slow speed, and they're like trying to walk and all that stuff. But I found the action to be kind of a little undecipherable at times because I couldn't really follow along with the fights. Did you have any, especially at the night?
Well, a lot of the main trend in movie filming, I mean, professionally speaking, is a very drastic change in cinematography. If you look at, I like to compare Western movies. I'm going to pick something like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and I'm going to compare it to the first Bourne movie. Those are very, very iconic, very well-made movies. But if you look at The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, you have very wide shots. Westerns, spaghetti westerns are known especially for their long, drawn-out cinematic scenes where, you might have a train depot, and you'll have literally 2 minutes of the exact same camera angle, but you'll have something that's drawing your attention, something very subtle. It's very slow moving. It's very particular. The battle scenes, usually it's a gunfight or even a fist fight is generally shot very wide, very open. You can see what's going on. Mm-hmm. As opposed to modern movies, particularly in fist fights or something, it's very, very quick, very close up. Yeah. Very, very confusing. It's supposed to convey this confusing, energetic, fast-paced blur
giving this feel like you're actually there in the midst of the brawl.
Yeah,
at times. Yeah,
and the very shaky camera, very unsteady, very confusing, and that's what they're trying to get you to think, and they're trying to stir up those emotions. That's what movies do. They're there to stir up emotion. But I didn't really have too much of a problem, but I see what you mean, especially at night, very sort of muted tones.
It was really hard to decipher what the robot or the monster was doing at times.
Yeah.
I thought for one moment it looked like it would be grabbing onto its back, or is it going to try to grab it from somewhere or something like that, and I couldn't really figure out where the hand, they would cut to something else, and they're in a completely different position or something. Yeah. It was a little weird. Yeah. But it was pretty cool. I mean, did you see this in 3D?
No, I didn't. I generally avoid 3D.
Okay. I thought I was going to see it in 3D, but it wasn't. That's okay. I'm sure it must have been really spectacular in 3D. Now here's some things I want to bring up. A lot of people, there wasn't that much collateral damage as there was in Man of Steel.
Yeah, see, that's one of the things, along with the romance relationship and this this damage to a city, but yet they took the 30 seconds that they needed into the whole story. You know, it's a 2-hour movie. They took less than 30 seconds to evacuate the city, and ta-da, now you can destroy the whole city all you want without having to worry about casualties or people dying. And that's a modern trend, is to have all this graphic collateral damage. Like you're saying, Man of Steel, let's just destroy half the city, and let's have little bodies floating in the air and then being crushed. You know, let's show this graphic. And, you know, and you have like Independence Day, hey, let's just obliterate half the city and show all these people being just annihilated by a laser. And I really like that about Pacific Rim, is they had all this action and this fighting, but it
wasn't gory.
It wasn't gory. It wasn't necessarily violent.
There were some frightening moments. I mean, especially like when Beckett's brother is
sort of ripped away by the monster.
Yeah.
But even that was like
even the scenes when like some of the pilots are like in the water, like the Russians, they're in the water, and that beast is on top of them, and they're in the water, and they're trying to fight to get back up, but the monster just like bites the head off, I think.
Something like that. And so again, you know, the fact that they were able to have all this action without all this violence was really nice and refreshing.
Like there were some destruction. I mean, let's be fair. But most of the action actually took place at sea. Mm-hmm. That was another thing too. There wasn't like a whole lot of fighting on the land. Now, I haven't heard like a whole lot of like 9/11 comparisons. I don't know why people. I mean, yes, 9/11 was a horrible day. I mean, that's something that will be imprinted within us for the rest of the subconscious for the rest of our lives. I mean, we have images and all that stuff of that day. But what gets to me is that, you know, a movie like Man of Steel is going to be criticized for that, but yet at the same time, Transformers kind of gets away with its mass destruction, and I don't hear any criticism on that aspect, other than that the movies are stupid. But
well, I think again, like I was saying, I think after thinking back, you know, coming here trying to think of different things to talk about, and the fact that they abandoned the city in Pacific Rim, how I really like that. If you think about it, they did something very similar to that in Transformers, because you know, I'm sort of replaying those scenes in the final battle. And with all the military guys walking through the various buildings, you don't see any civilians. So you think about it, you know, all the civilians are there. They're able to destroy a city without having any problems, any worries about people inside the buildings. You know, everything's abandoned, so you can blow up all you want, and it's not a problem. But I think with Man of Steel, again, you know, this very populated area, you see all the graphic destruction.
Or the Avengers. That's another.
Yes, Avengers. They also
went overboard.
Yeah, again, you had the same thing. You know,
but I don't remember any 9/11.
Well, I think when people say 9/11, they think of a single tall building being destroyed in some way, which is really absurd. I mean, to be, you know, setting people on fire because they had a single building being destroyed, you know, why not get upset when a little single-story ranch house gets destroyed? What's the difference between the two buildings? And again, it's
that fresh memory within our minds of that image of that day. I think that will continue to haunt us.
Yeah, and it's that.
And a lot of these. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but a lot of these liberal, and a lot of these people are liberal movie critics. You know, a lot of them were not even for the war.
Well, I think it has more to do with a large loss of life in a single moment, and I think
and what war does, what war eventually does, and that takes more lives. And it's like we had our loss.
Yeah, I think.
But it's like, but again, it's like we retaliated. When you have somebody attack your country that's already in peace, that hasn't had any trouble with you in the past, or that hasn't had any current issues with you.
Well, you got to be careful, because it was not a nation that attacked. Did the whole 9/11. That was a single group. People call them.
Well, the terrorists. I should have chosen my words a little more carefully. Yeah, these group of people that.
Well, a lot of people like you're saying. I think the reason why people draw these comparisons is because it was so recent. I think it was 2001.
2001. I mean, it's been.
So it was about 12 years. But people, if you wanted to look at similar things in history, if you wanted to look at the the drastic loss of life. You can people
Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, Pearl Harbor was one of the things I'm thinking about is
San Francisco, the San Francisco earthquake.
Yeah, but it's like the Nazi Germany with their massive murders of not only Jews but Christians and disabled people. I mean, a lot of people like to focus on the Jews, but Christians were killed just as much. Disabled people, retarded people, these different castes of society that we very cherish and protect here in America. Yeah. They killed and they murdered, and people, will use that in movies and such and try to draw a similarity, though they try to be a lot more careful about it. But really to have a single building or have a series of buildings being destroyed and to say, oh, that's 9/11, that's bad, and then try to, like you're saying, and try to oppress the movie because of that,
Yeah.
Like you're saying, that's just not right.
Yeah. Now here's one of the dumb things I just did not like. It was the whole thing with the Ron Perlman character. He was the kaiju
dealer,
bone dealer or something like that, and he had all like the kaiju parts, and I thought he was great in those scenes. But when you find out that the one monster that the robot kills lands somewhere, and then the science guy is trying to look for a part of the brain, which leads into a very weird climax. But we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But and then you find out there's a baby inside of the monster. I thought for one moment there they were going to set up the fact that a lot of most of the monsters are females, and that they're carrying infants, and that would be kind of like a sequel setup. Oh my gosh, there's a possibility that these things were gonna, or it was gonna be resolved in this movie that the more of these come, the more that they might actually spread. They were gonna come at a quicker pace. But no, it's a setup for a gag.
Yeah, well, I think they,
especially at the end, I really rolled my eyes at the end of that scene.
Again, this is just, it's a popcorn movie. It's just there to, at least this is the way I look at it, it's just there to be entertaining. If they just throw stuff in there, it's like, that's sort of funny. But it was surprising when, the guy got eaten and then.
Oh yeah, I thought he was done. I thought he was done.
Like, well, I didn't like him anyway. Oh well, just go on.
But then the baby gets strangled to death.
Yeah, that was just very convenient.
Yeah, it's like, well,
it was a very nice plot twist where it was like, they're inside the monster, and then, oh wait, there's a baby, and then you're like, oh, junk, and then you're like, oh my goodness, what could possibly happen? And then it was like, nothing much. It was just a little.
I mean, you basically find out, well, I think it was to that scene that you find out that the science guy basically uses the baby to look into its mind.
Which doesn't make sense, because he was a baby inside of the mother, so what would he know?
What would he know? And then he finds out the way, like, oh, you need to drag.
And then how does he get that from the brain, from the...
I did not get that.
See, it was just...
But he still didn't drag the thing... Well, he dragged it, but he didn't take it all the way with him to the...
See, I thought they were going to go somewhere along the lines of... because, the two pilots mind melt and then direct the robot. I figured that they'd come up with some reason, like, oh... The monsters aren't really monsters, they're just more like machines that are made out of organic material, and that you can pilot these. They're not really creatures, they're being piloted. So then you'd have some people pilot one of the monsters or something like that. I figured I was trying to come up with some crazy, what would they possibly throw at you that would put a wrench in this basic
and then they go into the sea in the climax, and they go to the... there was something that was kind of interesting. Because one of the scientists, either he states it as a fact or as a theory, that the first kaiju monsters were the dinosaurs. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that was like, you're just throwing stuff in there to do it. Yeah.
Well, that's creative. At least you're kind of trying to connect something interesting.
And then I liked how they try to throw global warming in there, and it's like, now that we've, now that the Earth is warmer and there's more carbon monoxide in the air, the aliens can come back. We've prepped the Earth for them. It's like, you're just being a greenie now.
The climax, I think, was fine. I think, well, that brings us back to the Mako, Beckett, and Stacker characters. Because then you find out that the Mako character is actually an adopted daughter of Stacker's. who he actually found during one of the early kaiju attacks. Now that was a part of the movie that I actually think I appreciated that the most of all the human stories.
Yes, I definitely agree. I think that the little girl that they got to act that
I found her adorable.
Amazing.
She was adorable.
And all my family and everyone I talked to, they were just like, "Oh, she's so cute. She was so good."
Yeah.
She looked really scared. And then that just makes you wonder, did they tell her puppy, got run over and she was crying?
I've heard a
or
lot.
Did they scare her? How do they do that? But
I've heard a lot of, I've heard when directors are trying to get kids to get scared or to act afraid, they tell them something horrible. But no, there was some really touching stuff, especially when Idris Elba arises from his machine, which was kind of a little weird because they're like, she sees it from this distance and like,
oh yeah, the whole sun behind him, he's silhouetted and radiating light from him. Yeah. But that's classic. It's like riding off into the sunset. That's just this.
Well, he's arising from the sunset type of thing, which was really cool. I really like that stuff a lot.
And I think if you want to be really particular, I personally think that the whole thing that later they tell you is he's one of the few that actually have piloted a Jaeger solo, just like the main character.
Yes.
It would have been nice if that was the instance where he did pilot a Jaeger by himself. I guess they tried to symbolize that with only him, climbing out. But it would have been nice to see a lot of damage on the robot, and then he was really scruffed up, and he's like, "Whoa, I can't believe I survived." And then he sees the little girl.
Yeah. But then we get into the climax. Did you like the climax? Do you think it was resolved kind of?
Which what are you talking about particularly?
When they go into the water, they said that monster's a group 5. He didn't look any much. I thought this thing was going to be bigger, but he wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I was a little depressed with the size. Yeah,
I thought he was going to be like this monster.
Of a monster, yeah.
Yeah, but no,
the Monstar.
The monster. Yes.
And then in the plot, one of the guys mentioned that this was supposed to be the one to eradicate all living things. The other ones were supposed to destroy society, and this one's supposed to take everything else out.
Yeah. But no, they take him down pretty easily. And for the most part, I mean, he damages the other robots, but They take so they manage to kill one and they drag it with them to the pit. For one moment there, I actually thought the guy was going to die. I actually thought it was going to happen. Is he going to die? Is he going to die? But no, But I had a feeling like he's probably going to get he's going to probably launch out because that had to happen.
Yeah, I think Oblivion, the new one with Tom Cruise, they did that where he sent the girl off.
Red herring.
Yeah, they make you think that, he and her are going to die, but then, oh no, he saves her and she doesn't die, but then he dies and you're like, oh, well, that's too bad. They had a relationship. Mm-hmm. But I think they did very well with, I was like, oh man, he's going to die. That's too bad,
Now, when their escape pads get to the surface of the ocean, when the girl climbs out,
yeah, somehow she swims across the ocean with how many pounds of armor on?
Well, not just that. Well, yeah, that was one thing, but I would be scared stiff to go into the water, especially with those things down there.
Yeah, well, they supposedly closed the portal.
I know, but still, it's like, are there more down there? Yeah. It's like that Jaws feel. It's like, I don't want to go near the water.
Yeah.
The romance. There was not really much of a romance. It was more of a...
Well, I think there was some romance. Again, the scripting was a little bad and the acting was a little bad. It sort of made it hard to appreciate it. But I think they had a lot of opportunity to have a good romance that a lot of people would really appreciate. I think that they did have a lot of character interaction. It did seem that he really liked her and she really liked him.
Yes.
It was a lot of good awkward moments that really sort of made you feel awkward and appreciate both characters. Yeah, and there's a lot of funny moments where she tried to open up the door and he's like, well, that's my room. And she's like, oh, Chuck, and sort of turns around and goes to her room. And I think they did have a lot of good relationships, and that's what I liked about it, is there was this really good relationship between he and her, and I think there was a good amount of romance.
But they didn't kiss. It wasn't it wasn't physical.
Well, the thing is kissing is overrated, honestly. I mean, but I think that at the end, the way they hugged was a very good, this was, this was deeper than just this romantic, let's be boyfriend, girlfriend for a few months, and then when we get tired of being boyfriend, girlfriend, we'll just go our separate ways. This was a much deeper, much better appreciation.
Yeah.
And it was nice to see that. And again, it was very clean. It was, and it was very deep, for a movie.
It wasn't, especially on a relationship matter, because personally aware of their backgrounds, because, I mean, he lost his brother to a Kaiju attack. She lost her family to a Kaiju attack as well. And so they were able to be relatable, and they both have the same mentor, which was the Stacker, the Idris Elba character.
And another thing is, they did mind meld, so there was that connection there.
Which we saw the connections between Beckett looking into her memories, and which I think that was handled very, very well.
Today there's not a man nor woman in here that shall stand alone. Today we face the monsters that are at our door. Today we are canceling the apocalypse.
So, what are your final thoughts on the movie?
I think that it was a very, very good movie. It's one of those movies I want to buy on DVD and just watch it whenever my all the girls in my family happen to be off doing something, and I just say, hey, I want a guys' night. Let's watch Pacific Rim. Let's watch giant robots smashing up giant aliens. Let's get some hot wings. Let's get some Dr. Pepper. Let's get some popcorn. Let's get some pizza. Let's just have a guys' night. This is just a great movie, and that I think is what the movie was made to be, and I think that it executed it very well. While it wasn't an Inception, it wasn't this deep, mysterious, mentally engaging. It was just a great action movie.
Yeah. Again, I really walked away from this movie really kind of like, I was just entertained. But the more I thought about it, I was like, you know what? This is a movie that Transformers should have been.
Yeah.
This is what Michael Bay should have done. Something along these lines but just decent. It was a really, I mean, there was some profanity, which bugged me a little bit. But other than that, I was just like, this is what it should have been. Transformers should have been, and what more summer blockbuster movies should try to be, to some degree. I just think that you can definitely do things a lot better and a lot stronger. Yeah, I don't know if I'll get it on DVD. I mean, maybe somewhere down the line I will, but I had an okay time. I was entertained. I would probably say go try to check it out in 3D. I'm sure the 3D is outstanding. That was a good show. Thank you, Trey, for coming onto the show.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Well, hopefully we'll do this again. Well, maybe we'll have the three of us do something big. Maybe for the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who.
We'll see. I'll have to catch up on the new season.
Same here. I haven't seen the season 7 yet, but I'll be glad to have you back on the show. We'll try to do something. Thank you for coming by.
Thanks for having me, man.
You're welcome. You can send us a question or like us on Facebook on the Story to Screen Facebook page.
Subscribe to YouTube.
Yes, please subscribe to YouTube.
Like it. That's free too.
On YouTube, we do not have an iTunes account yet. We're still Joshua's still trying to get that done. He just hasn't had the time. Anyway, that will be it for today. I am Chris.
I'm Trey Boles.
And have a good night, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll catch you next time.